The Grand Hall of Nexus Station was filled with hundreds of beings from across the galaxy. Some had 4 arms, others had scales instead of skin. There were creatures that floated in the air, and others that stood 12 feet tall. All of them had come together for one reason. They were celebrating the new trade agreement between 20 different worlds. Corporal Jin Park walked carefully through the crowd. He was carrying a tray of drinks, trying not to bump into anyone. The young Marine was only 22 years old, and this was his first assignment off Earth. Everything about this place amazed him. The aliens, the technology, the massive station that floated in space. He had dreamed about this since he was a child. Jin wore his dress uniform with pride. The dark blue fabric was pressed perfectly, and his boots shined like mirrors. His name tag read, Park, in bold letters. He was part of humanity's first military diplomatic unit, and he took his job seriously. Even if right now that job meant serving drinks at a fancy party. "Watch yourself, kid," said Sergeant Tae-hyun, walking past him. Tae-hyun was Jin's squad leader, a tough man with 15 years of service. "These aliens don't always look where they're going." Jin nodded and kept moving. He was heading toward a group of diplomats near the main stage. Ambassador Yuna Lee was there, talking with several alien representatives. She was Earth's chief diplomat, a smart woman who had helped humanity join the Galactic Council 15 years ago. Next to her stood Captain Hana Kim, the commander of their unit. Captain Kim never smiled much, but Jin respected her greatly. The hall was beautiful. Crystal columns reached up to a ceiling that showed the stars outside. Music played softly, a mix of sounds from different worlds. Tables were covered with food that Jin couldn't even name. Some of it glowed, some of it moved on its own. Jin walked around a group of small, furry aliens. They were laughing about something, making sounds like bells ringing. He smiled at them and kept going. Just a few more feet and he would reach the diplomats. Then, he could put down this heavy tray. That's when it happened. Jin didn't see the massive figure step backward. He walked right into something that felt like a brick wall. The tray tilted, and one of the drinks spilled. The liquid splashed onto the floor and onto the boots of the creature he had bumped into. Jin looked up, and up, and up. The being was nearly 8 feet tall. Its skin was dark gray and looked like armor plating. It had 4 arms, and each one was as thick as Jin's leg. Its face was hard and angry, with eyes that glowed red. Jin knew what this was. Everyone in the human military knew. This was a Krellian warrior. I'm so sorry." He put the tray down on a nearby table. "Let me get something to clean that." The Krellian stared down at him. Its mouth opened, showing teeth like knives. Around them, the conversations began to stop. Other beings turned to watch. Some of them moved away quickly. "You touched me," the Krellian said. Its voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "You, a human, touched me." "It was an accident," Jin explained. His heart was beating fast now. Something felt very wrong. "I didn't mean to bump into you, sir. Please, let me make this right." The Krellian's name was Dravik. He was a war master, one of the highest ranks in Krellian military society. For 3,000 years, the Krellians had been the galaxy's most feared warriors. They had never lost a war. They believed they were superior to all other species, especially to humans. Dravik looked at the wet spot on his boot. Then he looked at Jin. Then he looked around at all the other beings watching them. In Krellian culture, being touched by a lesser species was a terrible insult, and in front of all these witnesses, the insult was even worse. "You dare?" Dravik said quietly. "Please," Jin said. "I'm sorry. It was an accident." "There are no accidents," Dravik replied. "Only disrespect." Captain Hana Kim was moving through the crowd now. She had seen what happened. "War Master Dravik," she called out. "Corporal Park meant no offense. We will clean." Dravik's hand moved faster than anyone expected. The backhand strike hit Jin across the face with incredible force. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Jin's body flew backward through the air. He traveled 10 feet before hitting one of the crystal columns. The crack was sickening. Jin's head hit the column and his skull broke like an egg. His body slid down to the floor, leaving a red streak on the perfect crystal. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He was dead before he finished falling. The entire hall went silent. 200 beings from 40 different species stood frozen. Some covered their mouths. Others looked away. A few nodded slowly, as if what happened made sense to them. Dravik stood over the body. He wiped his hand on his uniform, cleaning off Jin's blood. The human needed to learn his place, he said loudly. You are all witnesses. The contact was his fault. Under Krellian honor law, my response was justified. Captain Hana Kim's hand moved to her weapon. Her fingers touched the grip of her pistol. Her face was white with rage and shock. Sergeant Tae-hyun was next to her. His jaw clenched tight. His eyes were locked on Dravik. But Ambassador Yuna Lee put her hand on Captain Kim's arm. Not yet, she whispered. Her voice was shaking, but her words were clear. Not here. Not now. He killed one of my Marines, Captain Kim hissed back. I know, Ambassador Lee said. Her own hands were shaking, and they will pay. But if you shoot him now, we start a war that Earth cannot win. Not yet. Around them, other aliens began talking. Their voices were quiet at first, then louder. The Velkari, a species of scholars, looked uncomfortable. The Threxian merchants whispered to each other, but others, especially the warrior races, seemed to accept what had happened. To them, Dravik had simply enforced his honor. 3 Krellian guards moved to stand beside Dravik. They crossed their forearms and stared at the humans. The message was clear. If the humans wanted trouble, they would get more than they could handle. Medics came and took Jin's body away. They covered him with a white sheet, but the blood still showed through. Sergeant Tae-hyun watched them carry his young friend away. His fists were clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. The party was over. Aliens began leaving the hall. Some looked sad. Some looked afraid. Some looked at the humans like they were weak for not fighting back. Dravik walked away with his guards. He didn't look back once. To him, the matter was settled. He had punished a lesser being for its disrespect. In his mind, justice had been done. Ambassador Yuna Lee stood still, watching everything. Her mind was already working. Jin Park had been a good Marine, a good young man with his whole life ahead of him. Now, he was gone, murdered in front of everyone. And the galaxy thought this was acceptable. She made a decision right then. The galaxy would learn that humans were not weak, that human life had value, that you could not kill a human and walk away proud of it. The galaxy would learn the hard way if it had to. Captain Kim stood next to her. What do we do? She asked quietly. Ambassador Lee's voice was cold as ice. We show them who they killed. We show them what it means to kill a human. We show them that mercy is a choice, not a weakness. The stars outside looked beautiful and peaceful. But inside Nexus Station, something had changed. The humans had been pushed too far. And the galaxy was about to discover what happened when you made humanity angry. The video reached Earth 6 hours after Jin Park died. Every news station played it. Every screen showed the young Marine being struck down. People watched him fly through the air and hit the column. They watched him die. They watched the Krellian walk away like nothing had happened. Earth exploded with anger. Millions of people took to the streets. They marched in Seoul and New York and London and Tokyo. They carried pictures of Jin Park in his uniform, smiling at the camera. They demanded justice. They demanded action. Some wanted war right away. The government buildings were surrounded by crowds. People shouted and cried and held up signs. "Justice for Jin Park!" they yelled. "Make them pay!" But the government knew something the crowds didn't. Earth was still new to the galaxy. They had good ships and brave soldiers, but they were outnumbered. If they started a war now, they would lose. And then Earth would be alone in a dangerous galaxy with no protection. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Yuna Lee stood before hundreds of alien representatives. She had barely slept. Her eyes were red from crying and anger. But her voice was steady. Corporal Jin Park was 22 years old, she said. The translation devices carried her words to every species in their own language. He had a mother and father who loved him. He had a little sister who looked up to him. He joined the Marines because he wanted to serve. He wanted to help build peace between our worlds. She paused and looked around the chamber. Some aliens met her eyes, others looked away. He was murdered in front of 200 witnesses. And your law says this is acceptable. Your law says that because he accidentally bumped into a Krellian, he deserved to die. The Krellian delegation sat in their section. There were 15 of them, all warriors. Dravik sat in the center, looking bored. He examined his claws while the human spoke. The council leader, an ancient being called Vorash, spoke with a tired voice. Ambassador Lee, we understand your grief. But Krellian honor law is recognized by this council. The contact was initiated by your Marine. War Master Dravik responded according to his cultural rights. Cultural rights? Yuna Lee's voice rose. Murder is a cultural right. Among warriors, yes, said a Velkari delegate. The Velkari were scholars, peaceful beings who studied law. The Krellians have followed these traditions for millennia. We cannot change their laws because one human made a mistake. Sergeant Tae Hyun stood in the back of the chamber. He wanted to jump down there and start shooting. Captain Hana Kim stood next to him, her hand on his shoulder, holding him back. They both wore black bands on their arms for Jin. Ambassador Lee took a deep breath. She had expected this. The galaxy didn't care about one dead human. To them, humanity was still the new species, the weak one. They needed to learn differently. Then I invoke the right of vindication, she said clearly. The chamber went completely silent. Even Vorash looked shocked. The right of vindication was an ancient law, thousands of years old. It was almost never used because it was basically a death sentence. Ambassador, Vorash said slowly, do you understand what you are asking? I do, Yuna Lee replied. The right allows a species to challenge their offender to sanctioned combat. We challenge the Krellian Empire. If we win, they must pay for Jin Park's death and accept responsibility. If we lose, Earth will accept the Council's judgment. The Krellian delegates began laughing. It was a harsh sound, like metal scraping on stone. Dravik stood up, grinning widely. The humans want to fight us? He asked loudly. The Krellians, who have never lost a war in 3,000 years. This is madness. Perhaps, Ambassador Lee said, but it is our right under your laws. Do you accept? Dravik looked at the other Krellian delegates. They were all smiling now. This was perfect for them. They could crush the humans in battle and prove once and for all that humans didn't belong on the council. We accept, Dravik declared. 500 warriors each. On neutral ground. To the death or surrender. When we win, humanity will leave the council forever and never return. Agreed, Ambassador Lee said. Her heart was pounding, but she didn't let it show. We will send our terms within the day. Agreed. The council session ended in chaos. Aliens were talking excitedly. Some thought the humans were brave. Most thought they were stupid. The Krellians had never lost. Their warriors were legendary. They were bigger, stronger, and had been fighting wars when humans were still in caves. On Earth, Colonel Wu Chang watched the broadcast from his office. He was 50 years old, with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in every major conflict Earth had seen in that time. He knew war better than most people knew peace. His phone rang. It was the Secretary of Defense. Colonel Chang, the voice said. You've seen the challenge? Yes, sir. Can we win? Colonel Chang was quiet for a moment. He looked at the screen showing Krellian warriors. They were massive, strong, dangerous. Yes, he finally said. But not the way they expect. Explain. The Krellians fight with honor. They meet their enemies face to face. They believe in glorious combat. They've done this for 3,000 years. And it's worked, because every species they've fought does the same thing. And And we're humans, sir. We don't fight for honor. We fight to win. 3 days later, Colonel Chang stood in a briefing room with 200 soldiers. These were not regular Marines. These were the best fighters Earth had. Special Forces, Rangers, SEALs, men and women who had trained their entire lives for combat. Captain Hana Kim was there. Sergeant Tae Hyun was there. They had both volunteered immediately. Nothing could have stopped them from going. Listen carefully, Colonel Chang said. The Krellians are stronger than us, faster than us, tougher than us. In a fair fight, they would destroy us. The soldiers listened quietly. So we won't fight fair. We're going to fight like humans. We're going to use every trick, every tactic, every advantage we can get. The Krellians expect a glorious battle. We're going to give them a nightmare. He pulled up images on the screen. Battle plans, terrain maps, Krellian combat formations. They've never lost because they've never fought anyone who didn't follow their rules. Well, we don't follow anyone's rules. We make our own. A young soldier raised her hand. Sir, is this honorable? Colonel Chang looked at her. Honor didn't save Corporal Park. Honor won't bring him back. But winning will make sure he didn't die for nothing. The Krellians want honor? Let them have it. We want victory. Back on Nexus Station, Dr. Mi-sun Choi worked in a small lab. She was a scientist who studied alien biology. She had files on every species in the galaxy. Now she focused on just one, the Krellians. She studied their strengths, their armor-like skin, their multiple arms, their ability to heal quickly. She noted it all, but she also studied their weaknesses. Every species had weaknesses. The Krellians were used to fighting up close. They relied on their strength. Their tactics were old and traditional. They always did things the same way because it always worked. They're predictable, she said to Captain Kim during a video call. They've won so many times they've stopped innovating. They do what worked 3,000 years ago because why change? Can we use that? Captain Kim asked. Absolutely, Dr. Choi smiled. They'll expect us to fight like them. When we don't, they won't know what to do. The galaxy watched and waited. Betting pools opened on dozens of worlds. The odds were heavily in favor of the Krellians. 100 to 1. Some odds were even worse. Only Earth believed in their soldiers. Sergeant Tae Hyun sat alone in his quarters the night before they left. He looked at a picture of Jin Park. The young man was smiling, excited about his first assignment. Tae Hyun had promised Jin's mother he would look after her son. He had failed. I'm sorry, kid, he whispered to the photo, but I'm going to make this right. They're going to learn that you mattered, that every human matters. He put the photo in his pocket, right over his heart. Tomorrow, they would show the galaxy what happened when you made humans angry. Tomorrow, the Krellians would learn that 3,000 years of victories didn't mean anything against an enemy who refused to play by their rules. Tomorrow, the galaxy would see that mercy was a choice, not a weakness. And humanity had stopped choosing mercy. The planet was called Ashara Prime. It was a dead world, covered in rocks and dust. There were no trees, no water, no life. Just gray stone and red dirt under a dark sky. The Galactic Council had chosen it as the battlefield because nothing could be damaged here. Nothing lived here to be hurt, perfect for a war. The Krellian warriors arrived first. 500 of them marched down from their ships in perfect formation. Each one stood 8 feet tall. Their armor shined in the weak sunlight. They carried energy weapons that could burn through steel and massive blades that could cut a person in half. Warmaster Dravik led them to the center of the valley. It was wide and flat, perfect for a proper battle. The Krellians set up camp, right there in the open. They planted their war banners in the ground, red and black flags that snapped in the wind. They laughed and sharpened their weapons. This would be easy. The humans would come, they would fight, and the Krellians would win like they always did. On ships in orbit, millions of beings watched through cameras. Every species in the galaxy was tuned in. This was the biggest event in decades. The unbeatable Krellians versus the new humans. Everyone knew how it would end. The only question was how long the humans would last. The human ships landed on the other side of a mountain range. The soldiers came out quietly. No flags, no banners, no formations. They just moved into the rocks and disappeared like ghosts. Colonel Wu Chang set up his command post in a cave. He looked at the maps on his computer screens. He could see where the Krellians were camping, right out in the open, waiting for a fight. Idiots, he said quietly. Captain Hana Kim stood next to him. They're in perfect position, sir. For them, yes. For us, it's a gift. He pointed at the map. They expect us to march down there and meet them. Army versus army. Honorable combat. We're not doing that, are we? Asked Sergeant Tae Hyun. Not even close, Colonel Chang replied. First rule of warfare. Never fight the battle your enemy wants. Make them fight your battle. For 3 days, the humans did nothing. They stayed hidden in the rocks. They sent up small drones to watch the Krellians. They mapped every position, every patrol, every movement. They learned the Krellian routines. When they ate, when they slept, how they posted guards. The Krellians grew angry. Where were the humans? Were they too scared to fight? Dravik sent out scouts to find them. But the scouts came back with nothing. The humans were somewhere in those mountains. But where? Cowards, Dravik shouted. They hide like insects. On the third night, the humans started making noise. Explosions echoed through the mountains. Not close to the Krellians, just close enough to hear. Gunfire crackled in the darkness. Flares shot up into the sky far away. The Krellians grabbed their weapons and stared into the dark. But nothing came. This happened every night. Boom. Crack. Flash. The Krellians couldn't sleep. They stayed alert, ready for an attack that never came. They got tired and frustrated. What are they doing? One Krellian warrior asked. Psychological warfare. Dravik growled. He knew about this from history files. Some species tried to wear down their enemies before fighting. But it wouldn't work on Krellians. They were warriors. A little lost sleep wouldn't stop them. On the fourth day, the humans finally showed themselves. A small group of Marines walked out from behind a rock formation. They were at the edge of the valley. Maybe 20 of them. They looked tired, scared. Sergeant Tae Hyun led them. He waved a white flag. We surrender, he shouted. We can't beat you. Please, let us live. The Krellians cheered. Finally, the humans had given up. But Dravik narrowed his eyes. Something felt wrong. His warriors wanted to charge immediately. But he held them back. It's a trick, he said. They're surrendering, one of his officers argued. We should accept it. No, Dravik said. They're trying to lure us out. But his warriors were getting restless. They had waited 4 days. They wanted glory. They wanted battle. Against his better judgment, Dravik gave the order. Take the prisoners. 200 warriors. The rest stay here on guard. 200 Krellians charged across the valley toward the small group of humans. Sergeant Tae Hyun and his Marines turned and ran. They ran toward the mountain pass, the Krellians chasing them, roaring with excitement. The humans ran into the narrow canyon. The Krellians followed, not thinking, just excited for the kill. This is what they did. They chased down their enemies. They crushed them. Then the world exploded. Hidden on the cliffsides above, human soldiers opened fire. Machine guns tore through the Krellians from 3 directions. Mortars rained down explosives. Snipers picked off the officers. The canyon became a kill zone. The Krellians were tough. Their armor-like skin protected them from some bullets. But not all. And not from the explosives. Warriors fell screaming. Others tried to fight back, but they couldn't see where the shots were coming from. Up the cliffs, Dravik shouted through his radio. Climb up and kill them. Some Krellians tried. They were strong enough to climb the rocks. But the humans had planned for that too. Combat engineers set off charges they had planted in the cliff face. Rocks fell, crushing the climbers. Those who made it to the top found more machine guns waiting. Captain Hana Kim watched through binoculars from her position. "Target the ones in the back," she said calmly into her radio. "Don't let them retreat." Snipers fired. The Krellians trying to run back to the valley dropped. In minutes, over 100 Krellian warriors were dead or wounded. The survivors huddled behind rocks, pinned down, confused. This wasn't how battles worked. Where was the honor? Where was the fair fight? Dravik was furious. He had lost half his force in an ambush. But he still had 300 warriors back at camp. He would not be defeated. He radioed them. "All units, attack the mountains. Find them and kill them all." The remaining Krellians charged toward the mountains. They were angry now. They wanted revenge. They spread out, climbing up the slopes in a massive wave. Colonel Chang watched them come. "Now," he said. Artillery hidden behind the mountains opened fire. Shells arced through the air and slammed into the Krellian lines. The ground shook. Fire and smoke filled the air. The Krellians kept coming. They were brave, incredibly brave. But bravery without tactics was just dying slowly. Human soldiers in defensive positions opened fire. They had built bunkers and firing positions over the past 3 days. They had overlapping fields of fire. Every approach was covered. The Krellians fought hard, but they were attacking uphill against prepared positions. More Krellians fell, but some made it through. They reached human positions, and things got brutal. Up close, the Krellians were deadly. Their forearms swung blades and fired weapons. Several humans died in close combat. But for every human that fell, 3 Krellians died. Because even in close combat, humans didn't fight fair. They used grenades. They called in airstrikes on their own positions. They used flamethrowers and mines and anything else that worked. Dravik himself broke through the lines. He was looking for the human commander. He found Sergeant Tae-hyun instead. The two faced each other on a flat rock overlooking the battlefield. "You," Dravik roared. "You murdered my warriors without honor." Tae-hyun looked at him calmly. Jin Park's photo was still over his heart. "We don't fight for honor," he said. "We fight to win. You killed my friend. You thought we were weak. You thought wrong. Face me like a warrior," Dravik demanded, raising his blade. "No," Tae-hyun said. He lifted his radio. "Fire mission. My position. Danger close." "You'll die too," Dravik said, confused. "Maybe," Tae-hyun replied. "But you'll definitely die." "That's good enough." He dove behind a rock barrier. Artillery shells screamed down. The explosions threw Dravik through the air. His armor cracked. His body broke. The mighty War Master, who had killed Jin Park so easily, died in fire and smoke. When the dust cleared, the battle was over. 463 Krellian warriors were dead. The remaining 37 threw down their weapons and surrendered. They had never surrendered before. They didn't even know how. They just stood there with their hands up, defeated. The human casualties were 87 dead. Too many. Each one hurt. But they had won. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in shocked silence. The unbeatable Krellians had been destroyed. By humans. By the species everyone thought was weak. Colonel Chang walked through the battlefield. Medics were treating the wounded, both human and Krellian. He stopped at each fallen human soldier. He learned their names. He promised to write to their families. Captain Hana Kim found Sergeant Tae-hyun sitting on a rock, staring at nothing. He had burns on his arms from the artillery strike, but he was alive. "Did we do the right thing?" he asked quietly. "Jin Park is still dead," Captain Kim replied. "But now the galaxy knows his death mattered. They know we're not weak. They know not to hurt us. Is that enough? It has to be." In orbit, the galaxy kept watching. The Krellians had lost. Humanity had won. Everything had changed. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Every species sent representatives. Even those who rarely attended were there. Everyone wanted to hear what would happen next. The humans had won. The impossible had happened. The Krellians, undefeated for 3,000 years, had lost. Ambassador Yuna Lee walked to the center of the chamber. She looked tired. The past weeks had been hard. But she stood straight and proud. Behind her, Captain Hana Kim and Sergeant Tae Hyun stood in their dress uniforms. They wore their medals, but also black bands on their arms. Jin Park's photo was pinned to both their chests. The chamber was completely silent. Hundreds of aliens watched the humans. Some looked scared. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. The galaxy had thought it understood humans. Now they realized they knew nothing. The surviving Krellian delegates sat in their section. They looked smaller somehow. Their leader, a gray-skinned warrior named Korvan, stood slowly. He walked down to the center. He stopped in front of Ambassador Lee. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then Korvan got down on one knee. The entire chamber gasped. Krellians never knelt to anyone. "We were wrong," Korvan said. His voice was rough with shame. "We thought you were weak because you valued peace. Because you mourned your dead. Because you tried to avoid conflict. We confused mercy with weakness. We were fools." He pulled out a crystal from his armor. It glowed with soft blue light. "This is a Krellian honor stone. It is given only to worthy warriors. We give this to Corporal Jin Park, whose death showed us our arrogance. We give this to humanity, who taught us that true strength is choosing peace when you could choose war." Ambassador Lee took the crystal. Her hands shook slightly. "Corporal Park was a good man," she said. "He deserves more than this. But this is a start. We will pay reparations to his family," Korvan continued. "We will build a memorial to him on our homeworld. We will teach our children about this mistake. And we formally request your forgiveness. Though we do not deserve it." Ambassador Lee looked at the Krellian. Part of her wanted to stay angry. Jin was still dead. Nothing could change that. But she thought about what Jin would want. He had joined the Marines to build peace, to make connections between species, not to start wars. "We accept your apology," she said. "But understand this. The galaxy must learn from this. Human life has value. Every species' life has value. You cannot kill someone and walk away proud of it." She turned to address the entire chamber. Her voice grew stronger. "The galaxy thought we were weak. You saw our desire for peace and our sadness over death as flaws. You were wrong. We have spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. We had wars that destroyed entire cities. We developed weapons that could end all life on our planet. We know violence. We're very, very good at violence. We just choose not to live by it." A Velkari delegate, a scholar named Trevik, stood up. "If I may speak?" he asked. When Yuna nodded, he continued. "I have studied human history. Your World War II killed over 60 million people in 6 years. Your weapons have names like atomic bomb and chemical warfare. You have tactics books on how to destroy cities and break armies. We thought these were old things, past things. We didn't realize you still knew how to do all of this." "We remember," Ambassador Lee said. "Every war, every death. We study them. We learn from them. Not because we want to use that knowledge, but because we never want to forget what we're capable of. That's what makes humans dangerous. We remember the cost of violence, and that makes us careful with it. But when we decide it's necessary, we use it without hesitation." Dr. Mi-sun Choi was invited to speak next. She was the scientist who had studied Krellian biology. She brought up images on the big screens. Footage from the battle. Tactical diagrams. Analysis reports. "You want to know how we won?" she asked the chamber. "It's simple. The Krellians fought the way they always fought. With honor. With tradition. With 3,000 years of tactics that never changed, because they always worked. They fought the same way their ancestors did." She clicked to the next image. "Humans? We adapt. Every generation fights differently than the last. We learn. We innovate. We throw out old ideas that don't work and try new ones. The Krellians brought swords to fight enemies with swords. We brought artillery and ambushes and psychological warfare. We didn't fight their battle. We made them fight ours. A Gorvathi warrior, another species known for combat, stood up. Your tactics were dishonorable, he said carefully. You hid. You used tricks. You struck from hiding. Captain Hana Kim stepped forward. In human military, we have a saying. The only fair fight is the one you lose. We don't fight to prove how brave we are. We fight to protect our people. If that means using tricks and ambushes, we use them. If that means being called dishonorable, we accept that. We'd rather be called dishonorable than bury more of our soldiers. The Gorvathi thought about this. But where is the glory in such fighting? Sergeant Tae Hyun spoke for the first time. His voice was hard. Glory? My friend Jin Park died for no reason. He was a good man. A good Marine. He had a family who loved him. Where was his glory? Where was his honor? He was killed for bumping into someone by accident. Don't talk to me about glory. The chamber was quiet again. The Gorvathi sat down, looking thoughtful. A Threxian merchant, a species that normally stayed out of military matters, stood next. If I may ask, what does humanity want now? You have proven you can fight. You have defeated the strongest warriors in the galaxy. Do you want to replace the Krellians as the military power? Ambassador Lee shook her head. No. We don't want to be the galaxy's warriors. We don't want to be feared. We just want to be respected. We want other species to understand that human life matters, that you can't hurt us without consequences. That's all. But you could, the Threxian pressed. You could demand tribute. Territory. Power. You won that right in battle. We could, Captain Kim agreed. But we won't. That's the difference between humans and the old Krellian way. We fought because we had to. To make a point. To get justice. Not because we wanted power. We just want to live in peace and be treated as equals. The council leader, Vorash, finally spoke. The council must discuss these events. But I think I speak for many when I say, humanity has earned our respect. You are no longer the new species. You are full members of this galaxy, and we will treat you as such. Over the next week, things changed quickly. Multiple species approached Earth's diplomats requesting meetings. The Velkari wanted to study human military history. The Threxians wanted trade agreements. Even the Gorvathi, proud warriors, asked if Earth would consider training programs to teach human tactics. But the most surprising visitor was a group of young Krellian warriors. They came to Nexus Station requesting to meet with Colonel Wu Chang. When he agreed to see them, they bowed deeply. We want to learn, their leader said. We want to understand how you think. How you fight. We don't want to make the same mistakes our elders did. Colonel Chang looked at them for a long time. Then he smiled slightly. War isn't something to be proud of, he told them. Every person I killed haunts me. Every soldier I lost hurts me. If you want to learn that first. War is a last resort, not a first choice. We understand. The young Krellian said. That's why we want to learn from humans. You won. But you're not celebrating. You're mourning. You understand the cost. Back on Earth, Jin Park's family received visitors. Korvan, the Krellian leader, came personally. He brought the reparations. Enough money that Jin's parents would never need to work again. Enough that Jin's little sister could go to any school she wanted. Jin's mother, Mrs. Sunhee Park, looked at Korvan. Will this stop you from killing others? She asked. Yes, Korvan replied. I swear it. We will teach our children about your son, about the cost of arrogance, about respecting all life. Then Jin didn't die for nothing, she said quietly. Tears ran down her face. He wanted peace. Use his death to build that peace. On Nexus Station, Workers began building a memorial where Jin had died. It would be a statue of a young Marine, smiling. The plaque would tell his story in every language. It would remind everyone who passed that strength and cruelty were not the same thing. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humans were not weak. They never had been. They had chosen peace because they understood war. They had chosen mercy because they knew how to be merciless. And that choice, that decision to be kind, when they could be cruel, was what made them truly strong. Ambassador Yuna Lee stood looking at the construction one evening. Captain Kim joined her. "Do you think it will last?" Captain Kim asked. "The peace? The respect?" "For a while," Ambassador Lee replied. "Until the galaxy forgets again. That's why we need the memorial. To help them remember. And if they forget anyway, then we remind them. But hopefully, just with words, next time." 3 years had passed since Jin Park died on Nexus Station. The galaxy had changed in those 3 years. Not overnight, but slowly. Like a ship turning in deep water, Sergeant Dong Il-han stood in front of a classroom on Nexus Station. The room was full of young aliens. There were Krellian children, Valkyrie students, Threxian youth, and a dozen other species. All of them looked up at him with curious eyes. Dong-il had left the military a year after the battle. The fighting had changed him. He had his revenge, but it felt empty. Jin was still gone. Dravik being dead didn't bring Jin back. So Dong-il decided to do something different. He started the Jin Park Cultural Exchange Foundation. The goal was simple: help different species understand each other so maybe, just maybe, fewer people would die. "Today we're going to talk about Earth history," Dong-il said to the class. He pulled up images on the screen behind him. Old photographs. Black and white pictures of terrible things. "This is Hiroshima. A human city. In 1945, my species dropped an atomic bomb on it. One bomb killed over 100,000 people." The young aliens looked shocked. A small Valkyrie raised her hand. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do that to your own species?" "Because we were at war," Dong-il explained. "Humans fought other humans. We do it a lot, actually. World War I killed 17 million people. World War II killed over 60 million. We've had hundreds of smaller wars too." A young Krellian boy spoke up. "But you're all the same species. Why fight each other?" "That's a good question," Dong-il said. "We fought over territory. Over religion. Over resources. Over ideas about how society should work. Sometimes we fought just because we hated each other. Humans are very good at finding reasons to fight." He clicked to another image. It showed concentration camps. Another showed trenches full of dead soldiers. Another showed entire cities turned to rubble. The young aliens looked horrified. "I show you this," Dong-il continued. "Not to scare you, but to help you understand humans. We know what war costs because we've paid that price over and over. When we say we want peace, we mean it, because we've seen what happens when peace fails." A Threxian student raised a tentacle. "Is that why you're so careful about violence? Because you know how bad it can get?" "Exactly," Dong-il nodded. "Every human child learns about these wars in school. We remember them. We study them. Not because we're proud of them. We're ashamed of them, but we remember so we don't forget what we're capable of. That's why when Dravik killed Corporal Park, humanity responded the way we did. We remembered all of this. And we decided, never again. No one kills a human and walks away proud." The young Krellian boy looked down at his desk. "My uncle fought at Ashara Prime," he said quietly. "He died there. My family says humans fought without honor." Dong-il walked over to the boy's desk. He knelt down so they were at eye level. "Your uncle was brave. Fighting is always hard, and dying in battle is a terrible thing. I'm sorry for your loss. But honor doesn't stop bullets. Honor doesn't make families less sad when someone dies. Humans fight to win because we want our people to come home. That's our honor. Protecting our own. The boy thought about this. Then he nodded slowly. I understand. You fight differently, but you fight for the same reason we do. To protect your people. Yes. Dong-il smiled. Maybe if we all understand that, we can stop fighting altogether. Across the station, Captain Hana Kim walked through a busy corridor. She wore a different uniform now. Not just human military colors, but a mix. Blue and red and green. The colors of the Joint Task Force, the first combined military unit with soldiers from multiple species. She entered a training room where her squad was practicing. There were 10 humans, 8 Krellians, 5 Velkari combat specialists, and 3 Gorvathi warriors. They were running through a tactical exercise together. Again! Captain Kim called out. You're not working as a team. You're working as separate species. That's going to get you killed. A large Krellian warrior named Tevek approached her. He had been at Ashara Prime. He had survived the battle and specifically requested to serve under Captain Kim. Commander, the Gorvathi want to charge directly. It's their way. And what did we learn at Ashara Prime? Captain Kim asked. That their way might not be the best way, Tevek replied. He turned to the Gorvathi warriors. Brothers, I know you want glory in combat. But Captain Kim taught us that the real glory is in victory. In protecting your squad. In coming home alive. One of the Gorvathi growled. Hiding and shooting from distance is cowardly. Captain Kim walked up to him. He was a foot taller than her, but she didn't back down. Do you know why I'm standing here today? Why I survived Ashara Prime? Because I didn't try to be brave. I tried to be smart. My job isn't to die gloriously. My job is to complete the mission and bring my soldiers home. If you can't accept that, you can leave my squad. The Gorvathi stared at her. Then slowly, he nodded with respect. I will try to learn your ways, Commander. Good, Captain Kim said. Now let's run that exercise again. And this time, talk to each other. Use each species' strengths. Krellians, you're strong and tough. You take point. Humans and Velkari. Provide covering fire. Gorvathi, you're fast. You flank. Work together. They ran the exercise again. This time, they moved as one unit. Each species doing what they did best. Supporting each other. When they finished, Captain Kim actually smiled. Better. Much better. Later, she met with Ambassador Yuna Lee in a quiet cafe. The ambassador looked older now. The stress of her job showed in new gray hairs and tired eyes. But she smiled when she saw Captain Kim. How's the Joint Task Force working out? Yuna asked. Better than expected, Captain Kim replied. The other species are learning. They're starting to understand that there's more to combat than just being brave or strong. Tactics matter. Planning matters. Working together matters. And how are you doing? Yuna asked more quietly. Captain Kim was quiet for a moment. I still think about Jin Park every day. About Ashara Prime. About the 87 humans we lost. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. What do you conclude? That we didn't have a choice. Dravik killed Jin and thought he could get away with it. If we had done nothing, the galaxy would have kept treating us like we were weak. More humans would have died. So yes, it was worth it. But that doesn't make it easy. Yuna nodded. Colonel Wu Chang said something similar when he retired. He said winning doesn't erase the cost. We just have to make sure the cost meant something. On Earth, Mrs. Sunhee Park sat in a garden. The garden was new, planted with flowers from a dozen different worlds. Seeds sent by alien species as gifts, as apologies, as symbols of peace. Her daughter, Jin's little sister Yu-Jin, sat next to her. Yu-Jin was in university now, studying xenobiology. She wanted to understand other species, to help build connections. Like her brother had wanted to do. Mom, Yu-Jin said softly, do you ever stop missing him? No, Sunhee replied. But it gets easier to remember the good things. His laugh. His smile. How excited he was to join the Marines. How proud he was of his uniform. I wish the galaxy had known him, Eugen said. Really known him. Not just his death. They're learning about him, Sunny said. Dong-il sends me updates from his classes. He shows the students pictures of Jin. Tells them about who he was. What he liked. His dreams. Jin wanted to help build peace between species. In a way, his death is doing that now. The galaxy is more peaceful because of what happened. Do you think that makes it okay? No. Sun-hee said firmly. Nothing makes it okay. Jin should be here. He should have lived his full life. But since he can't, we make sure his death wasn't meaningless. That's all we can do. On Nexus Station, the memorial was complete. The statue showed Jin Park in his dress uniform. Smiling. One hand was raised in greeting. Friendly. Open. Peaceful. The plaque below read in every known language, Corporal Jin Park, Earth, born 2265, died 2287. He came in peace. His death taught the galaxy that mercy is a choice, not a weakness. May all who pass remember, the strong protect, they do not oppress. Every day, beings from dozens of species stopped to look at the statue. Some left flowers. Some left small gifts. Krellian warriors left honor stones. Valkyrie scholars left books. Threxian merchants left coins for luck. And every day, someone new learned Jin's story. Learned about the young Marine who died for nothing but taught the galaxy everything. About the humans who proved that peace wasn't weakness. About the battle that changed how species saw each other. Sergeant Dong-il Han stood in front of the memorial one evening. He was alone. He touched Jin's name on the plaque. Hey Jin, he said quietly. I hope wherever you are, you can see what's happening. The galaxy is different now. Better. Species are working together, learning from each other, treating each other with respect. You helped make that happen, buddy. I just wish you were here to see it. The station lights reflected off the bronze statue. Jin Park's smile looked real. Like he was about to say hello. Like he was happy about what his death had accomplished. Even if he would have rather lived, the galaxy had learned its lesson. Not perfectly. Not forever. But for now, things were better. And when future generations asked why, someone would bring them to this statue. They would tell them about Jin Park, about Ashara Prime, about the day humanity showed the galaxy that the most dangerous species is the one that chooses peace, but knows how to wage war. The stars outside Nexus Station shined bright and peaceful. Inside, beings from 100 worlds lived and worked together. Not perfectly. There were still fights. Still disagreements. Still problems. But now they talked first. They remembered what happened when talking failed. They remembered a young Marine who died on a floor in a grand hall. They remembered the battle that followed. They remembered the lesson humanity taught them. Peace was a choice. But it was a choice you could only make if you were strong enough to make it. And humanity had proven they were strong enough. That was Jin Park's legacy. Not death, not violence, but the peace that came after, the understanding that followed, the galaxy that learned to be better. And somewhere, maybe, Jin Park was smiling about that.